Hello, welcome to News Center Now on this Monday, everybody. Obviously, all the talk is about what happened in Las Vegas last night, early this morning, and it's something we'll be spending a lot of time talking about tonight.
Yeah, tonight we're learning more about what happened, and we're learning more about some of those victims.
We'll also talk live with somebody who was at the Mandalay Bay when this happened and get his account of all the madness that occurred.
Just want to warn you, some of these images may be disturbing.
That's the AR.
We were hiding because there was like just shots going everywhere.
Jason Aldean was performing. He was like 10 minutes in, and we heard what we thought were fireworks. He kept performing, and then we heard it again, and they cut the music, and everyone said drop, and everyone dropped.
There probably was 200, 300 rounds.
We have determined to this point no connection with an international terrorist group. As this investigation continues, we will continue to work with our partners to ensure that this is factually, thoroughly, and absolutely investigated to be able to bring comfort and peace back to this community.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Amanda Hill.
And I'm Lee Goldberg. Today, family and friends of almost 60 victims of the Las Vegas shooting are mourning a devastating and senseless loss as this entire country is shocked by just the unspeakable violence.
Yeah, last night a gunman opened fire on a crowd of country music fans gathered at the famous Vegas Strip. Investigators say the gunman had a stash of weapons in his Mandalay Bay hotel room. He smashed a window on the 32nd floor and started raining bullets down on the Route 91 Harvest Country Music Festival. And when police stormed his hotel room, the 64-year-old gunman, Stephen Paddock of Nevada, was already dead.
Now, hours after the shooting, officials are releasing the names of the 58 confirmed fatalities. The victims will not be identified until family is notified, which is why there is such a long delay. So far, we do know a nurse from Tennessee was shot dead protecting his wife from gunfire, and a heavy-duty mechanic from Canada was killed. His family now working with the Canadian consulate to figure out the next steps there. A native Alaskan who had just returned from a fishing trip is the latest person to be identified. He and his friends stopped in Las Vegas to celebrate their trip.
At this point, we're not aware of any victims from Maine.
Now, my cousin was actually in Las Vegas last night. I was checking in with him when I found that he was actually at the Mandalay Bay pulling into the hotel parking lot as all of this started. Stephen Halzell joins us now live on the phone. And Stephen, first of all, I'm glad you're okay. And just what happened when you're pulling up to the hotel in this taxi cab? What do you remember happening?
Oh, yeah, no, thankfully, thank you. Yeah, when I pulled up into the, I was in the cab, and the cab said we were going through the side entrance because of the concert. And as I was pulling up, I could hear the gunfire just beginning. And it just sounded like rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. It was absolutely distinguishable. I mean, I knew that wasn't firecrackers or a helicopter. It was just a machine gun of some sort, and we immediately pulled off into a parking lot next to it. We actually heard over the cab walkie-talkies that they had said that there was an active shooter at Mandalay Bay, which was the hotel I was about to check into. So we had, as this happened, we had turned down the right. Actually on the road right below the window where I just saw on the news where the window was. I was directly below the shooter's window, and as we pulled to the right to try to get away from that area, nobody knew at the time, whether it was one shooter or multiple shooters, and there were just people running in all directions. It was absolute pandemonium.
Stephen, you mentioned that you could smell the
gunfire.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry?
No, I was just going to say, you had mentioned to me that you could smell the actual gunpowder. I can't even imagine what the scene was like with everybody scattering and nobody knowing what was going on.
Yeah, we could smell the gunpowder from where we were. So that's why nobody. I mean, no one ever suspected it was somebody up, 32 stories, and just people didn't know where to go or which way to run, because the sound of the bullets were coming from all angles. So people just were running in all different directions.
Was there ever a moment of calm, Stephen, after this? What was kind of the scene after, and where do you go from there?
Yeah, it seemed like there would be a round of gunfire, and then within a few seconds another round of gunfire, and then there would be like about a minute, and then another round of gunfire, and then there was like a couple minutes where there was no gunfire, and people were just trying to find ways to get away from the Mandalay Bay in that area. I actually went around the corner to another hotel to the back side of this, and was trying to just wait it out. And what ended up happening was people were running in. People actually came through that hotel as well, saying that the shooter was inside that hotel. So I was outside of the cab at this point. I ended up going into a parking lot next door and was looking for a truck, and people were looking for trucks and cars to hide underneath because nobody knew what was going on at the time still.
You had mentioned that the police set up a perimeter pretty quickly, and that they had checked you out and everybody out to make sure they were okay before you were even allowed to pass any further.
Right, and then right after that, the SWAT teams were, so you could hear the police down in front of the Mandalay Bay, but also the SWAT teams had set up a perimeter around the entire area, and they were just walking, systematically closer and closer to where the shots were fired, and they were checking out everybody. They had their helmet lights on, and they had their M16s, and each person that they encountered, they pointed the gun right at them, had them hold their hands up, tell them, make sure they checked them out, and then told them to run across the highway to the other side to get as far away from that area as possible.
All right, Stephen. Well, thank you for sharing your story. I'm glad you're safe and back home, and I really appreciate you taking some time with us today.
Yeah, my heart goes out to everybody there, and it was absolute pandemonium, but the first responders I heard were just totally amazing.
Wow. All right, Stephen, thank you. All right, meanwhile, this afternoon, President Trump held a moment of silence on the White House lawn. He was joined by First Lady Melania, as well as the Vice President and Second Lady. Flags across the country are at half staff today, including at the U.S. Capitol building. The president said he and the First Lady will pay their respects in person.
We're going to Las Vegas on a very, very sad, it's a very sad moment for me, for everybody, no matter where you are. No matter what your thought process, this is a very, very sad day. So we're going to be doing that on Wednesday, and we'll be spending the full day there and maybe longer than that.
This is the deadliest mass shooting in modern history. To see the numbers laid out like that is just truly gut-wrenching. And Sunday night's deadly shooting has many of us feeling overwhelmed by all of the violence.
Yeah, News Center's Tennyson Coleman joins us to tell us about how tragedies like this can affect all of us directly or indirectly.
In August, violence in Charlottesville caused panic throughout the United States. In September, it was a devastating hurricane season. Yesterday, on the 1st of October, the world bared witness to the deadliest mass shooting in the nation's modern history.
And we have tons of friends in Las Vegas, and seeing like Facebook posts, making sure like everyone's okay, but I mean, it's devastating.
I'm just in shock, just every single time I hear something like this.
These are just some of the reactions from Mainers who woke up Monday to reports of tragedy in Las Vegas. For many, it seems the bad news just keeps on coming. I talked to two mental health experts for advice on coping with the feelings that come along with devastating headline after headline.
For some people who may have lost a loved one to gun violence, this may trigger an intense reaction that would require them to get support of some kind, whether from their minister or perhaps to seek counseling.
Portland psychologist John O'Brien says national tragedies like this can sometimes have unexpected effects.
If someone's already in treatment and they're finding that there really are having difficulty setting aside thoughts and, about this or images about this, that it's important that they talk to their clinician.
Jeffrey Barkin has been a psychiatrist for over 20 years. He says events like this are nothing new.
4 most dangerous words in the English language. It's different this time. Violence, aggression, and tragedies have been rampant throughout history.
In a divisive political climate, he says the best response in times like these is not to point the finger, but instead to come together.
The single best thing I think any of us could do, and you saw this in the national response after 9/11, was communities come together and talk. It restored a sense of community. So it became, rather than me and my response to the tragedy, it became a collective, our response to the tragedy.
Now, you guys, yet another tragedy that we've had to kind of cope with in such a short time span. And again, you never know how the person next to you is dealing with it. I just wanted to say as a reminder, it's National Mental Health Awareness Week. So for anyone that needs help or needs someone just to talk to, I'll have resources for you in this article on our website.
You don't even have to be involved directly with that situation to be affected by some of these, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. One of the doctors said, you know, if you have lost a loved one to gun violence or have been in any situation like this before, it can kind of trigger that in your mind, kind of remind you of it.
All right, resources online. Thanks, Tennyson. All right, still to come on now.
I think that we have to raise the notch a little bit as far as our planning on these events.
A security expert says the venues need to be aware of the security risks and concert goers need to know how to react in the event of an active shooter. His advice coming up. When we are out enjoying a concert with our friends, we're certainly not thinking about what would you do in the event of an active shooter.
Yeah, a security expert here in Maine says that is the sad reality, though. We need to take precautions, and he thinks venues really need to do more to keep people safe.
I think now what we saw after the events in Vegas and the events we've seen in the last few years, we have to raise the notch a little bit as far as our planning on these events. I think that the only way to stop these events if they happen is to have professionals on scene, whether it's law enforcement or private groups, to provide that high level of security that can stop that threat. And that means that in an open air environment like this, that what we have to do is maybe put up some shields, some screens, so at least we take the visibility of the mass group away from any potential shooter. Or we provide an overwatch position by trained long-range professionals to counter any threat that happens. More businesses have to be aware of, you know, the acts of violence. We have workplace violence, we have motor vehicle assaults, we have the mass shootings, we have concert shootings. These people that control those domains, they have to start thinking about planning worst case scenario mindset to keep everybody safe that comes to their facilities.
And you can hear what you can do to protect yourself in this unthinkable situation that's coming up on News Center at 5:30.
Already millions of dollars have been raised to help victims of this shooting. The Clark County Commission Chair in Las Vegas created a GoFundMe page to help cover medical bills and provide relief for families of the deceased. That link is on our websites if you'd like to make a donation. Meanwhile, we will be following all of the developments out of Vegas as they happen on air and online. But coming up in local news, a Mainer wins one of the world's most prestigious awards. We will talk to this Nobel Peace Prize winner after the break.
And the driving force behind Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument wants to unseat Congressman Bruce Poliquin. Those stories and more after the break.
If you ask me a tough question, I'm not going to run into the bathroom to avoid you. I'll listen and we'll talk.
Lucas St. Clair was throwing some shade at Congressman Bruce Poliquin just minutes after revealing his campaign to unseat the District 2 representative. St. Clair led the effort to create the Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. He says that experience helped him decide to run. He says he wants to take what he has learned from talking to Mainers across the state and put that into action, especially when it comes to health care and creating more job opportunities for young Mainers. St. Clair feels Congressman Poliquin dodges the hard questions and hasn't done enough for the people of Maine. He says he can bring the change that people are asking for.
Now, Congressman Poliquin took no time to respond to that announcement, saying becoming a politician is just part of St. Clair's next life quest. His statement went on to say St. Clair is completely out of touch, pointing out that he is registered to vote in Portland and doesn't even reside within the 2nd District. The winners of the Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine were announced today, and among them, a man from our own state.
It was me.
Jeffrey Hall lives in Cambridge. It was not Lee Goldberg, sorry. Cambridge is a town near Dexter with a population of just over 400 people, in case you're wondering. He won the award with 2 colleagues for his studies of biological clocks in humans and other organisms. Now, that trio used fruit flies for their work. Hall has lived in Cambridge for many years. He's 72 years young, rides his motorcycle all over town, and has 7 dogs. Oh, he's beating you, Lee. He said this prestigious award was a big surprise.
This is wildly unexpected, albeit much appreciated. From my perspective, which is, as usual, as pompous as can be, that the crucial awardee is not just the trio in question and the 2 other guys I know very well for many years. The crucial awardee is the little fruit fly that we long worked on.
Hall was an adjunct professor at UMaine from 2004 to 2012. The school released this statement to congratulate him. Dr. Hall is an outstanding scientist whose research is of the highest caliber, contributing to the central understanding of circadian rhythm, a fundamental mechanism found in plants and animals. We were honored to have him as a member of the UMaine community. We'll have much more with the quirky scientist coming up tomorrow on Now.
For the record, I don't know what was going on in the background, but it was kind of gross.
In
case you missed it.
Yeah,
An update for you now on a story we first talked about at the beginning of the school year. Lewiston Middle School decided to ban cell phones during school hours. The kids cannot have them out at all for any reason, and if they do, there would be consequences.
So we decided to head back there today and check in both with the school administration and the students to see how things are going so far.
I'm surprised and pleased at how well it's going. Feels like in some ways it's maybe even a little bit of a relief for the students that they can put that aside, that social media aside, for the 6 hours that they're here at school.
I think it's good because for some students it's not really a distraction anymore and they're not tempted to take it out.
I listen to the rule. I don't really take my phone out anymore because I know if I get caught with it more than 3 times, it gets taken away and my parents have to come in. But my mom, she works late, so she wouldn't be able to come and get it, and she would also get mad at me. So I don't like taking my phone out.
Lewiston Middle School has actually had this policy in place for quite a while now, but first-year principal Jana Mates decided to make sure that her staff strictly enforces it this year.
All right. All right, that had a lot of people talking.
Yeah.
Hello, Keith.
Hello. Biological
Welcome.
clock, by the way, not what you think it is. When the Nobel Prize, it wasn't about women's desire to have a kid at 30-something. It was maybe tomorrow's brain drops. I'll talk about the research they did. It's kind of interesting because that's what people think of. Do they not?
When you hear biological clock, yeah. Are you trying to tell me something?
Had nothing to do with that. Oh no, you have answered that call many times, Lee. Don't worry. It is in the 60s for highs today, 70 in Freiburg. What a huge diurnal change from the morning hours to the afternoon. It was in the 20s in spots this morning, got to around 70 though. Here's what we're going to deal with tonight. A lot of 30s, below freezing in spots, and right around 35 to 40 over the mid-coast and down East Maine. Hence, we have frost advisories in effect for Bangor and Augusta down through the mid-coast and parts of down east. Remember, these aren't the only areas that could see a frost tonight. They're the areas that haven't seen a frost yet. So inland locations will get a frost, but they've already kind of been deemed over the hump, so they don't issue advisories. Otherwise, you'd be issuing a frost advisory every night through the winter. That doesn't make any sense. Visible satellite is clear. Next weather maker is back here. Won't get in till Thursday. So tomorrow and Wednesday, we're in good shape. It'll be getting warmer though through midweek. It's all about the position of this ridge of high pressure. So we stay sunny tomorrow. Very similar day tomorrow as to what we dealt with today, which was beautiful, of course. Eventually this high slides away. We get into a southwest flow on Wednesday, and that's a warm flow. I told you last week I thought we could hit 80, and I think that's still the case on Wednesday afternoon. A front comes through on Thursday morning with a couple of showers. We should clear out, though, for Thursday afternoon and be in better shape. So hour by hour forecast, again, tomorrow looks great after a cool start. Temperatures get into the mid-60s in a lot of spots. And then tomorrow night we'll cool again and then start warming up, though, on Wednesday. Temperatures quickly getting to the upper 70s, and some of us will get to 80 by the afternoon, which is pretty much well above average for this time of the year. Still have a drought going on. Don't see any relief for that. A couple of showers, but nothing big in the forecast. So I just checked on the average high temperature in Portland, which would be one of our warmest observation stations. 64 is the average this time of the year. So when we get to 80 or so on Wednesday, we're kind of blowing by that. At this point, the weekend doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look amazing. There'll be some showers on Saturday, an isolated shower on Sunday. I'd say, guys, the best chance of a good looking day, if things change, will be Sunday. I could see us being between the front, in which case we could get back into the upper 70s again.
First week of October, dude. No complaints
I know,
from me.
it's not quite going away.
All right. Thanks, Keith. All right, time to choose this week's Hometown Showdown winner. Here are your choices. Levitt versus Cape Elizabeth, Old Town versus MCI, or Lake Region versus York. You guys know how this works by now. Go to pulse.newscentermaine.com to vote, or open up the mobile app and choose the Pulse tab.
Whichever matchup wins that the most votes will get a visit from a fifth quarter reporter for a special preview of this Friday's game.
All right, Cindy has a preview of what's coming up at 5:30. Cindy?
That's right, guys. We, of course, are going to have much more on the Las Vegas shootings. Everyone's talking about that today. We're also talking with venues here in Maine, because we have a lot of these large outdoor events in Maine, about how organizers keep their patrons safe, and especially at this time when really it seems like those kinds of places could be easy targets. So we'll have that coming up at 5:30. Back to you.
All right, before we go tonight, we want to recognize so many of you are sending your well wishes to Las Vegas. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, we're going to send you into break with some of those notes, and we want to thank everybody for your kindness and your compassion. And we'll be joined by News Center at 5:30 after this, but we appreciate you guys taking the time to send your thoughts and your love towards Las Vegas.